Hey amazing fourth graders, today we're starting our new unit on geometry. I love geometry, but then I love everything about math. This is just a cool, different type of math that's a little bit more visual. It still has all the mathematical elements into it. And today we're going to talk about lines. I decided to start with lines because lines make up so much of what we're going to be doing in geometry. And you say, what's a line? You know, I've been making lines forever. I walk in a line. I have to follow a line. I have to park between the lines, right on the line. But there's a line that is a geometric term. So let's start with something as simple as that. I'm going to pull this a little bit closer so you can see. This is a line how you would make it in geometry, because this is what we're used to seeing as a line, but that's not really a line. A line in geometry goes on indefinitely. Indefinitely means forever and ever and ever. So how do we show that? We show that by making almost these little arrow ends. So those arrow ends show that lines go on forever and ever and ever and ever. So here's a line. And I'm going to give that line a name. And how I give it a name is I'm going to put a point on there. A point is a reference. It's a place. So it's like a little circle, and I'm going to label it A. So that's a point. So we start with the most basic. It almost looks like a dot, but it's like a little circle. And then I give it a capital letter. Remember, for geometry, we're using capitals. When it was algebra, it was lowercase. So you need to clarify. So it's a capital A. That is a specific spot. So this is the specific spot A on my line. So I could give that line a name, line A. I could also add another point on that line. I'm going to put right here. That's a specific spot. And I'm going to give it the name B. So I have point A on my line, and I have point B on my line. Remember, this line goes on forever and ever. So I could call this figure line AB, or I could also call it line BA. So I could go left to right, or I could go right to left. Also within that line, I have the space between A and B. So because I have these little arrow marks at the end, it means my line goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. There's no stop, there's no beginning, there's no end. These are certain points. There's an infinite, which means an endless amount of points on a line. So I could just go on forever and ever and ever and ever and make little points on a line. But I happen to put point A and point B. So I'm going to write it down here. That looked like A and B. But when I take this point A and B from my line and I bring it down here, where it has a definitive, it has a beginning, it has an end. It doesn't have the arrow that tells me it's going on forever and ever and ever. It has a beginning point and an end point. This is called a line segment. A segment. A segment is part of a whole, almost like our fractions and decimals. A line segment is a part of a line. Just like I said, I could put infinite or an endless amount of points on this line. I could put an infinite or endless amount of line segments. I could add another letter right here. Let's say F. So within this line, I could call this line AF. I could call it line FA. I could give it all these different names. But inside that line, I also have line segments. Now I have segment AB. I have segment AF, which this is my beginning point, this is my end point. I also have this segment. this part of the line. So I also have segment BF. So I have AB, I have AF, or I have BF. So I have all those different segments which have a beginning point and an end point. So that point tells me it's a specific spot. I start here, I end here. I start here, I end here. Or I can look at where F is. My point F is right here. And then I have my line going on forever and ever and ever. When I have a beginning point and what looks like the rest of my line that goes on forever and ever and ever, that's called a ray. This is called a ray. A ray has one point and then it goes on indefinitely. I think of a ray as like a ray of sunshine. It starts at the sun and then the sun shines everywhere. It goes on forever and ever and ever. So this is a ray. I could call that ray F, G. You can give them any letters you want. So now we have something that starts with the smallest. We'll call that point F. When I put 2 points together, here's my F, and I'll do L. So this is called line segment FL, or I can call that segment FL. I'm going to take F, L, which are my 2 points, and there's a segment, and I'm going to make them go on forever and ever and ever. So now, because they have this little arrow at the end, it's called line FL or line LF. So now it goes on forever and ever. I can look in here and I have L, then the rest of my line, so this is a ray. I also have a ray going at this end. So I have points, I have segments, I have lines, and I have rays. So let's take a look at my line. We're going to call it RS. So that's line RS. And then I'm going to take another line, and I'm going to draw it right through that line. I'm drawing my new line right through that line. And I'm going to call it P and L. So now I have line RS, I have line PL, and then where they cross or they meet, I'm going to give that the letter M. That's where they intersect, lines that intersect. These are called intersecting lines. That means they cross over each other. So they intersect at point M. So these are called intersecting lines. Just like if you're driving a car and you get to an intersection. An intersection is like a corner where 2 roads merge or cross. So here's line RS, here's line PL. They intersect, they cross over each other at point M. So those are intersecting lines. We also have lines that never intersect. Intersect means they never cross over each other. They never touch each other. And I'm going to draw them this way because we generally don't see them this way. Let's go with CT. So that's line CT. Remember, lines can go in any direction you want them to, and they go on forever and ever. So here's line CT. And I'm going to draw this line right below it, and I'm going to call it PR. So because they have this like little arrow at the end, it means they're going on forever and ever and ever. So these lines are going on indefinitely, forever. I have line CT going on at both ends forever. I have line PR going on forever at both ends. No matter how far they go, they will never, ever, ever intersect. They'll never touch. They'll never cross. They're running right next to each other. Lines that run right next to each other and they never touch each other are called parallel lines. A pair of lines, parallel. These are parallel lines. They're going to go on forever and they're never going to cross. They're never going to touch. They're never going to intersect. So those are parallel lines. I would like to think of it as a pair, and a pair is two. I could have another set of parallel lines. I could have parallel lines going on forever. Parallel. They'll never, ever, ever, ever touch. So those are parallel lines. So we have lines that intersect, which means they're going to cross at some point. These are intersecting lines. Then I have lines that are parallel. These two lines are parallel. They're never, ever, ever, ever going to touch. Let's label these. Let's do this T, R, we'll give you M, L, S. Whoo, I got all kinds of letters going on in here. P, D. You can use any letters you want. So if I look at this, I have parallel lines, a pair of lines that never touch. My parallel lines would be PD, or I could call it PMD, or I could call it DP. This line and line TR, they're parallel. They will never, ever, ever, ever touch. And sometimes you see parallel lines written like this. That means they go on forever and they never touch. I also have an intersecting line. Look at this line right here, intersects with both of these. It intersects with both of my parallel lines. Remember, intersect means crosses. It goes over, they touch. So like an intersection, cars go through an intersection, one road going one way, another road going another. Where they meet is an intersection. So these lines intersect. There's also another way that lines can cross or intersect. And I'm sure you've probably heard of this before. Let's see, give these some names. R, L, D, M. So now I have two sets of lines. I have line DM. I have line RL. Look at this. They crossed, they touched. Although they intersect, there's something special about these lines because where these lines intersect or where they cross makes a certain type of angle. I'm going to get a piece of paper just to show you. The angle or the way they cross, I could put my paper right in here. And it's just like the corner of the paper. And we're going to get to this in geometry, but they form what's called a 90-degree angle or a right angle. So when they cross, and it's like a perfect cross, where I could slip my paper in there, in any one of these. I could put it up here. I could put it over here. Each one of these is a 90-degree angle. A 90-degree angle is like a right angle. It's just like this. So when they cross and make a 90-degree angle or they intersect, they touch, they're called perpendicular. That's a big name, but it means they make a right angle. Generally, you will see it shown by a little box. So these lines, DM and RL, are perpendicular. They make that 90-degree angle. So lines can do a lot of different things. Lines are going to make up a lot of our polygons we're going to be talking about. Lines are so important in geometry. And to recap, we start with a point, point P. Point is a specific place on a plane. I'm going to put my points on my lines. I'm going to put my points on my rays. So here's a point. That's called point P. You can give it any letter. Remember, it's a capital. When I join two of these points together, let's take P and L. So now a beginning and an end. This is a definitive or it's a specific spot. This is called segment. PL. So this is a segment. This is a spot that has a beginning, that has an end. I'm going to take that segment down here, PL, and I'm going to make it go on forever and ever and ever. And I show that by those little arrow ends. So now that this segment goes on forever and ever at both ends, now we're going to call it a line PL. And that's shown by going like this. And a segment, I can do my letters, and on top it's like that. Or it can even just be without the lines. So we have a point, we have a segment, we have a line. And if I take one part of that line right here, now it has beginning and it has no end, because this tells me it goes on indefinitely, forever and ever. So that we're calling a ray. A point, a segment, a line, an array. When we talk about our lines, when our lines go on forever and ever and ever, like lines do, this tells me they're going on indefinitely. They will never touch, they will never cross. They're called parallel lines, a pair of lines, parallel lines. Forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, they're gonna go on and never touch. Parallel lines. I'm gonna bring in this line. Oh, geez, I went right over those lines. I crossed right over that pair of parallel lines. I intersected it. Right here and right here, we're gonna do P and Q. I intersected those parallel lines. These are called intersecting lines. They cross over, they meet. Lines will do that. Goes on forever, goes on forever. Intersecting lines. Now I'm going to take a line. Here's my line right here. We're going to do this line PQ, which intersected or crossed over my parallel lines. And look at, I'm going to take this line. And it also goes over this line, but look what's special about going over this line. If I put my paper, whoops, I didn't draw that as well as I wanted to. Maybe I need my paper to help me. There. Now that exemplifies it a little bit better. Now I have line TM. Now I have this new line that crossed over, but look at right here. This is where it intersected or it touched, but there's something special about this. Because if I put my paper here, looks like 90 degrees, looks like 90 degrees, looks like 90 degrees. And remember, that's shown by this. So it crossed it perfectly, like the corner of your paper, like a right angle. When it does that, it's called perpendicular. Perpendicular lines. We have parallel lines that will never, ever, ever, ever touch. We have intersecting lines that cross each other. And then we have perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines are shown by this little square that tells me it's a 90-degree angle or the right angle. So lines are a lot of fun, and there's basically 3 types: parallel, intersecting, and perpendicular.